Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode on Consulting Interview Prep with me, Nilay Bhatnagar, on the Misi Mindset channel here on YouTube. In this episode, we'll take a closer look on how to crack investment decision and prioritization cases. Yes, you heard that right. We'll cover both investment decisions and prioritization cases in the same episode because the approach that we're going to use for both of them will be fairly similar, right? So let's quickly understand what are the key objectives or what are the key things interviewers are looking for when they give you these cases, right? So when the case is about making a particular investment, right? So this could be starting up or setting up a new hotel or building a new hotel, expanding an existing manufacturing facility, right? Upgrading or making upgrades to your technology or moving to the cloud, right? So you're making certain investment. And so the key focus of the case is on ensuring that the investment meets the financial and strategic objectives of the client, right? Whereas if there are multiple options the client has to choose from, or this could be like comparison between two options or more than two options, then again the focus is the same thing, like which option is more suitable for the client financially and strategically. But here we'll just create a scorecard which will have the same dimensions of evaluation as the investment decision case. You will just frame it as a scorecard to evaluate the multiple options that the client is contemplating between. Okay, all right. So our approach for both of these cases, both types of cases, would involve answering four key questions. Right? What will be the financial impact of the decision, or what is the financial impact of the different options that we're talking about? What will be the strategic impact of the different option of the investment decision or the different options that we're talking about? What are the key operational considerations that we have to be mindful of? And then what are some of the key risks associated with the investment or the different options that we're talking about? All right. One quick call out, when we're talking about the financial bucket, this of course is super important when you're dealing with for-profit organizations, but even in cases where the client is a public sector organization, this bucket is still valid, but the focus might be more on the cost side, right, rather than on the profits, which is the primary objective for for-profit organizations. All right. With that said, let's take a closer look at each of these four questions or four areas of evaluation. So the first one, what will be the financial impact of the decision, or what is the financial impact associated with the different options that the client is thinking about, right? Now, financial impact is typically a core component of any investment decision, right? It's quite logical. If there's an investment, the client would be interested in knowing the financial outcome of that decision. So that's why we are starting here. Now, to compute or to calculate the financial impact, we'll look into three areas, right? Understanding the market characteristics, impact on revenues, and impact on costs, right? Market characteristics are very similar to what we've been doing in all the case types, right? Look at the market size, the growth rate, look at the competitive landscape, whether it's fragmented or consolidated, and analyze the customer base to understand their key purchasing criteria, right? Now, please make a note that this bucket may not always be applicable, right? Especially when you're dealing with public sector cases, this bucket might not be that relevant. So be careful of when you should be using this bucket. I'm giving you a holistic way of approaching these cases, but please apply some discretion and remove and pick and choose appropriately based on the case that you're dealing with. Okay? All right. The second part is estimating the impact on revenues. Now, again, a quick call out, the revenues that we're talking about are incremental revenues, the revenues that are associated with the investment decision, right? So always think in terms of incremental revenues over and above the base case or the current existing revenues, right? Now, new sources of revenues could be many, and this will really depend on the case, right? It could be increased sales because you're using like better quality products because of a better technology. It could be new customer segments because now you are able to target more people, right? It could be increased output or productivity because of some changes that you've made, or like you new technology that you've started using. Or if it's the case about a new hotel, right? So you have to understand how many new customers can we expect, what price will they be willing to pay, right? So in this bucket, you're trying to estimate what will be the incremental revenues associated with this decision. And then finally, you'll take a look at incremental costs. Again, the word incremental is super important. And this will again be broken down into upfront costs. Whenever you're making an investment, you will have to think about some upfront costs, like the cost of setting up operations, starting up a new thing, purchasing a land, stuff like that, if you're building a hotel. So there will be some upfront costs, and then of course there will be ongoing costs, fixed and variable costs, depending on whatever the client situation is. So that's how you will evaluate the financial impact of the decision, or how you will compare the financial lucrativeness of different options that the client is thinking about. Now, one final thing on this topic, that in some cases you might be required to actually calculate the ROI or the payback period associated with the investment, and that's where you will kind of use the figures, right? Incremental revenues, incremental cost, how long will it take you to recoup your upfront investment? That's your payback period. How long does it take your profits to recoup the upfront investments? Okay. All right. Moving on to the second bucket, what will be the strategic impact of the decision? Which option will be strategically more suitable or more attractive? Now, again, I've given you a long list of things that you can talk about. But as I said previously, not every single bullet point will be applicable to the case that you're dealing with. So please apply some discretion and talk about things that will be relevant for the client. So just don't memorize everything that I've given to you. These are the things, the areas that should be top of your mind, and then you should be selective and use only the things that would be relevant for the client situation. So let's quickly talk about some of the strategic areas of impact. The first one is brand and reputation impact. Will this particular decision enhance the firm's trust, credibility, brand reputation, position in the market? Right. Alignment with long-term vision. Right? Is this decision aligned with where we are headed in the long term, or does it take us away in terms of time, energy, and resources from our long-term vision? Right? What will be the impact on corporate culture and workforce morale? Will it energize employees, improve their productivity, promote alignment, or does it risk internal resistance and conflicts? What will be the impact on DEI for our organization? Right? What will be the impact on environment? Will it meet our sustainability goals? Right? What will be the impact in terms of reach and quality of services provided? Right? Now, this is very, very important when you're talking about public sector cases. So, for example, if your client is a public sector client, maybe like the public education department, right? So that the reach and coverage of their education services or their public schools become very important. Similarly, if your client is the public healthcare department, then the reach and access of their facilities, hospitals, medical staff becomes very important for them. Right? And the final two could be innovation and impact on customer satisfaction or excellence. Right? So moving on to a third bucket, here we will take a closer look at the key operational considerations, or which option is operationally more lucrative. So again, goes without saying, this is a long list of things that you can think of or you can talk about, but please only select a few that would be really applicable to the case at hand. Right? So the first operational consideration is, will we be able to finance this, or how will we finance this investment? Right? Do we have clear line of sight of how are we going to finance this investment? The second is, do we have leadership and talent commitment? So the top leadership should be aligned, and we should have ring fence top talent to actually lead the charge. That is very, very important to ensure that this new investment is a success. Local research and insights. Do we understand the market nuances, regulatory risks, on the ground realities associated with different options or with this particular investment? operations and supply chain. Which option is more operationally complex in terms of setting up the supply chain, from procurement to manufacturing to distribution to storage and warehousing? Which option is operationally more feasible? Stakeholder management. At times, these decisions will involve dealing with multiple stakeholders. These could be internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, regulatory bodies, government bodies, local municipalities, local population, vendors, etc. So stakeholder management becomes a key criteria, which will be easier. How many stakeholders do we have to manage, and which option would be the easier one in terms of stakeholder management, right? Permits and licenses. How long will it take for us to obtain the necessary permissions to actually go ahead and start our operations, right? Vendor and partner management, right? Again, very similar to what we talked about stakeholder management, but do we have reliable third parties? Which option give us more reliable third parties to deal with? And so on and so forth. So I won't go through everything, but I hope you understand some of the things that we will test or we'll check on the operation side to decide which option is more lucrative for the client. All right. And then moving on to a final bucket. What are the key risks? So there could be some market related risks over here. So market assumptions. Is a market's thesis reasonable? Have we accurately projected demand? There could be some regulatory risks. Have we accounted for contingencies in case like there's a shift in the stance of regulators, right? And on the operational side, there could be time and budget overruns. There could be cultural misalignment, and there could be just way too much operational complexity, resulting in shutdowns, compromised quality, etc. All sorts of issues. So to summarize, our approach for investment decisions and prioritization cases will look into 4 areas. 1, what will be the financial impact of the decision? 2, what will be the strategic impact of the decision? 3, what are the key operational considerations or the feasibility aspect? And finally, we'll end with some key risks. Okay, so I hope you found the session useful. As next steps, I would strongly suggest that you create your own recipe using this as a starting point. Apply that to multiple prioritization cases, investment decision cases, right? Refine it, finalize it. It becomes really intuitive for you. Right? And for me, I'll follow up with another video where we'll apply what we have learned to a real McKinsey or BCG case example on investment decisions. All right. So till then, take care and goodbye.